Hi, my name is Joseph, and welcome to part 11 of Digimon Seekers Hacker Leon www Airlines Flight 626. Now, before I actually get into the quote itself, I just want to quickly say I think this has probably been the most exciting part since Chapter 1 or towards the end of Chapter 1. I feel like so much has occurred and so much has happened in terms of world building, characterization, and just pushing the narrative forward. We got two big events with this part. I think it was quite clearly, what's the word? Clear, that's not the word. Telegraphed. I think it was quite telegraphed. I don't think that's the correct phrase, but I think it was obvious that Logormon was going to evolve, but he did not evolve into the route that EG was expecting. For those who have watched Digimon Adventure 1, and also Tamers, we know and are familiar a little bit with this plot beat. But let's go ahead and get into it. I do have a lot of thoughts, and we'll make sure to cover that via the quotes. So, he input a command, but EG input a command, but got no response. What on earth have become of EG's partner Digimon? My commands aren't getting through. My 2 is disconnected. Hey, Lorgomon, did you Digivolve? Hey, who are you? Grar. I'm not great with sound effects. The loud roar so hit EG's ears, he was almost certain blood would start trickling out of them any minute now. He slammed his fist against a blue screen monitor in desperation. The error occurred again, but at least this time it was occupied by the bare minimum of information. Ultimate, Digimon Beast, Virus. EG's partner had reached ultimate level. At least as far as the stats were concerned, they'd done it. The Digivolution was a success. EG kept trying to call out to the partner whose name he no longer knew, but there was no response save for the meaningless noise, which sounded like the low growls and rumbles of a beast. Logomon Digivolve. They made it to the ultimate level. Together they would win. They did this in order to win, but this was a mistake. The thing was going berserk. Let me read that last part again. This was a mistake. The thing was going berserk. So I purposefully started this quote so early to read this specific portion. The loud war assaulted EG's ears. He was almost certain blood would start trickling out of them any minute now. Personally, as a fan of horror, especially of Lovecraft and cosmic horror, I really enjoyed that description. One cool aspect that we're seeing of this slightly more mature way of delivering the story is that we're able to have, slightly mature depictions of events such as this. This has occurred before where Tikado's partner, I forgot his name specifically, but he also turned into a serpent-like Digimon as well. And Taichi's partner, when they both Digivolve, the Skull Greymon and the other Guillomon's Dark Digivolution, they emit this hideous sound, right? But because it's a kids format, they being the animators, they can't really show blood coming up from their ears, right? I really love how it's clearly blood is not actually coming out from EG's ears, but the fact that they get this description, it just really highlights how different Logomon is. Again, Logomon, I would say, and Logomon was never really cute per se. He was always very curt, a little bit demanding, and was always in kind of a leadership role, but he was still caring. He cared about the community, and now we have cared about the team, and now we have an evolution where obviously he just seems to be out of control. That is a bit scary, right? And the fact that his loud roar, EG was almost certain blood would start trickling out of them any minute now. His ears. That's such a dark description. I personally just really enjoy it. We're going to come back to that later on as well with Koichimon when he gets injured. That a brief description, but I have it highlighted. What I also like about this quote is despite EG being a little bit excited because they've done it, right? Technically, they made it. They've Digivolved. They're at the ultimate level. EG is still self-aware that he's able to recognize that this was a mistake. The thing was going berserk, his own Digimon. Even though Logomon Digivolved, that wasn't the route that they were aiming for or the objective that they were going for. As Digimon Digivolve, their specs got a boost, their attack, stamina, speed, and perception values all go up, and the process may also dramatically increase their processing speed. The process isn't always smooth though. Errors can and do occur, like an insect failing to transform in its chrysalis, or a vulnerable freshly mochi Kardashian. Christian. Sorry, excuse me, I can't pronounce words sometimes. A freshly molted crab, essentially. Kardashian. I feel like I'm saying too close to Kardashian, excuse me. I'm not doing that on purpose. I struggle with pronouncing words sometimes. Except when Digimon fails to evolve, it can cause them to go berserk. Text streamed down EG's monitor, error codes, endless streams of them. No, there's no such thing as success or failure with Digivolutions. Professor said so himself, so I take that back. But you lost control of your Digimon, EG, Leon said. So what I appreciate about this passage is that it's a quick reminder to the reader what happens when one digivolves, but there is a little bit of a cool detail here. I love how the professor, because I would argue most Digimon properties, evolution or digivolution, excuse me, I am more familiarized. Well, I did grow up with the dub, but I more recently watched the sub, so that's why I kind of flip-flop between the English-Japanese terms. But in the animated shows, I would argue that evolution and digivolution typically is not really explored. It's just something that the Digimon do in order to get more powerful. I love how we're getting a specific stance right here. The professor states that Digivolution is a neutral action. It's not a bad or a good thing. And I actually really do like that description. I think that's a really cool mature view way of looking at evolution and Digivolution. I think it's quite easy to say, oh well, Agumon turned into Skull Greymon. Obviously that's a quote-unquote bad evolution. But like with evolution itself in the real world, there's typically a purpose why they turn into, or why they evolved into that, right? And although it might seem negative, there might be a reason behind it. I might be looking too much into it because again, Digimon are animated programs and everything so forth. But I do like this neutral perspective of Digivolution. How E.G. Leon corrects himself. Leon states, this was bad, but then it was a failed Digivolution, but then at the end he states, oh, as I recall the professor saying, no, it wasn't a failure. It just didn't go the way it was supposed to, the way that EG was planning to, because they lost control. They being EG and Logomon. EG's sensors were still online, so the creature hadn't lost consciousness or otherwise shut down. The mind link was still active too, but EG couldn't communicate with it either mentally or through the usual tools and interfaces. You dug your own grave, EG, forcing it to digivolve like this. Leon's voice rose above the noise again. I forced Logomon to evolve? EG asked, stunned. We can consciously encourage Digivolution over the mind link, but it's a double-edged sword. The Digimon is heavily influenced by its partner's consciousness when digivolve that way. Well, that explains it. I digivolve Logomon so we can defeat you. But why? At what cost? Then what? Why? E.g., whether you acknowledge it or not, just look. Look at this misshapen, out of control, ultimate level Digimon. So really quickly, I do wish, again, I haven't really said this in a while because the translation's been quite great. Maybe not great, but it's been serviceable. But I do wish we could see the original for this portion. It's not under any quotation marks, so I'm going to assume that this is E.G. questioning himself, but why? At what cost and what's why? That's verbatim from the narration. But again, there's no quotation marks implying that this is E.G. thinking to himself. So before we get into the quote itself, really quickly, let me just insert my opinion. So in the last part, I was really excited to seeing how determined E.G. was at winning against Leon. He being E.G. had an entire plan to utilize the Tyrannomon, utilize Logomon to turn into Logormon, and overwhelm Koichimon, essentially. What I don't really like, so this is my first qualm with the story that I have, but it's not a big one. I do wish what occurred instead of getting this dark Digivolution right off the bat, and by the way, some of the viewers caught that. Good on you. I really need to be more like you. For whatever reason, maybe I was just being too optimistic, too positive, because I'm not going to lie, I am a big fan of E.G., but I was really hoping that E.G.'s evolution was going to be a success, but obviously because Koichimon is still higher level, even if Logomon evolved, that would not have been enough for E.G. to win. And then after that, because of E.G.'s confidence, now his determination turns into egotisticalness or arrogance rather than just confidence. That's what leads to Hello Logomon. Oh, Hello Logomon. So let me just quickly reiterate what I would have preferred instead is at the last part, Logomon successfully evolved to where he was supposed to go, but that still wasn't enough. And E.G., who became so excited by the fact that they succeeded, that determination turned into arrogance, and that arrogance is what led into Hello Logomon. So essentially maybe an additional part before we had this. The only reason why I would have preferred that is just because I think it would have been really cool to see a positive interpretation of being determined. I could see how E.G., Obviously, his heart was not in the correct place. He wanted to defeat Leon not for any noble conclusions or noble deeds. He wanted to defeat Leon just to make a point, which is actually expressed in this part. E.g. reviews that indeed he was jealous. But I think that's natural of most humans. All of us are going to have some amount of jealousy, but it's also a question of, well, how do we ignore that jealousy and continue with our own personal lives? So that's the only reason why I do wish that EG had succeeded at first, but then his determination turned into arrogance and then led into the Dark Digivolution with Hell Logramon. But with that being said, I'm still satisfied with the course of the story. I'm loving how EG's learning from this and what's coming from this as well. So I'm still happy with everything going on. So let's focus on the quote itself. So I like how Leon is obviously well versed with Digimon enough that he recognizes what went wrong with his Digivolution. Well, he is a bit, maybe not rude, but maybe too blunt when he tells EG that this is your fault. You dug your own grave. You forced Logomon to do this. But I think, like EG, they both view Digimon as well as sapient individuals. Thus, they don't want to place complete blame on the Digimon because in this instance, Logomon didn't just evolve on his own. He evolved because of EG's feelings, his emotions. And I appreciate how EG, how he recognizes that, well, that explains it. I did evolve Logomon so we can defeat you. But then he's also thinking to himself, but why? At what cost? He recognizes, was this the correct way of doing so? Maybe it didn't go as planned. Again, just highlighting, despite EG making this mistake, he is still kind of in control. He's trying to understand what went wrong and is trying to fix the situation. Again, I'm just pointing this out just because of Bandai Namco's description of EG being a dumb bunny. Again, I think this is further evidence. Despite EG messing up, he's not messing up. He's not running away. It's not possible for him to run away, by the way, because obviously he's in the Digicore. But he's trying to do actions within the Digicore, right? He's not just freaking out. I recently watched Futurama, where the cast is on the ship, the Planet Express ship, and Bender says that he's not afraid, and then all of a sudden he starts freaking out on his seat, right? Ichi's not doing that. He's not freaking out. He's still trying to regain control, right? But why? Why had this happen? The answer was obvious, and Leon said it himself. E.G. wanted it to happen. This is my fault. He done it to win. He just wanted to win. Even if that meant crushing Leon underfoot. He wanted to bring enough to win. He wanted to be strong enough to win. He had asked and he had received. Hell, Logramon would win. It might sacrifice the lives of others or its partner or itself, but it would win. Anything it could eat, it would crush underfoot. E.G. couldn't stop it as much as he wanted to. So again, that description at the end is a quite dark description. And I really love, I think we're only able to have this because we have an order cast and because it's being delivered in the written format. That is quite scary. Essentially, Logramon is just a entity that wants to consume, and that's all, until there's nothing around it, right? That's actually quite scary to think about. I'm sure Skull Greymon maybe was the same as was Guillomon's Dark Digivolution, but we wouldn't know, the audience, because, well, it was never expressed in the narration, right? In this instance, though, it might just be EG's perspective, but this is how EG is feeling, and as the viewers, we're more than likely going to agree with that perspective. Really cool. Let me make sure. And again, the answer was obvious, and Leon said it himself. E.g. wanted to happen. This is my fault. I love how the "my" is capitalized. Just again, really emphasizing how E.g. he is expressing remorse right here. And I think that's a big trait for protagonists to have. What do they do with that remorse? Do they ignore it? Do they try to correct it? And in this instance, E.g. is recognizing that he has the remorse. And I do think that during the story, he's trying to correct it. That says a lot about him as an individual. I appreciate that. Leon analyzed the data on his monitor through the pain of the attack on Koisimon. Hell Logomon's got a virus attribute. Its instincts are to corrode and destroy. Seeing as it was no longer listening to its partner, it was likely to destroy any data that happened to land in front of it and continue to do so until it, just like a virus, was itself destroyed. I just don't understand. How could a mega level Digimon like Koichimon get caught flat-footed by an ultimate? Was it all down to the sheer potential of E.G.'s connection with his Digimon? Leon felt the first tinges of anxiety creep over him. An alarm went off, drawing his attention. The alarm is the sea lion. I'm not going to read that portion. This is a smart quote, but what I like so much about it is even Leon is caught off guard. I would argue that up to this point in the story, it always seemed like Leon, if not in control, he had a backup plan to get back to being in control. But we're seeing that not only is Leon losing control, anxiety is starting to creep upon him. Again, really heightening the drasticness of this situation, really showing how Logomon is a dangerous entity at this moment. If one is not careful, well, as EG pointed out, they are going to be destroyed. And technically, that would be a quote-unquote win from Logomon's perspective. Yeah, continuing forward. The caution line and limit line as defined by Professor Ruzenji represented mind linking's biggest risk. EG and Leon had accepted that risk in order to have a chance at reaping the rewards. True hackers and code crackers weren't looking for peace of mind in the digital world in the first place. Anyone who did was a mark. That's mean essentially they're being too optimistic and thus they're being targeted. Naive essentially. And here they were putting their time, their lives on the line for a chance to stake their claim to something in the digital world. Leon, no matter how good of a hacker you are, you can't fire. Leon, no matter how good of a hacker you are, you can't fire off a bunch of mega level attacks in addition to maintaining this electromagnetic barrier. EG continued. He knew Leon was rapidly running out of time inside that mega Digimon, and that using any sort of attack would drastically reduce that time. Leon said nothing in response. I figured if I could drive you near the sea line, we'd be on equal footing for the first time. Then I could digivolve Logomon and, well, then Logomon went berserk. EG, I'm sorry, I did this to you. It's my fault. So again, what I like about this quote is it's highlighting EG taking responsibility. He's aware that what occurred is his fault. I would say completely his fault because Logomon was obviously willing to partake in the plan, but obviously Logomon had no control of EG's emotions, so that was EG's fault 100%. He should have kept his jealousy in control. But again, I like how EG's taking responsibility and he's literally telling what was his enemy a couple minutes ago, I'm sorry, I did this to you, it's my fault. I just think that shows a lot of characterizations for EG and again makes him a stronger individual. And I just like the reiteration of EG's plan. I figured if I could drive you near the sea line, we'd be on equal footing for the first time. Then I could digivolve Logomon and, well, then Logomon went berserk. Everything is just falling apart, unfortunately. EG wanted to win, even if that meant trampling Leon underfoot. Professor Ruzenji will finally see that he was better than Leon. Those who have nothing need a dream, a goal that drives. Those who have nothing need a dream, a goal that drives them. They long to carve out a space on the invasive plant that was a tree of freedom has allowed to. They long to carve out a space on the invasive plant that the tree of freedom has allowed to flourish. They want to stop fighting to simply survive. They long to be free of a life in which they cannot see beyond today. I don't know why I was struggling with that. EG didn't want pity, he didn't want help, he just wanted to be able to support himself as a code cracker. He began to equate the removal of his jealousy for Leon with the removal of Leon himself. If Leon could just get away, it all happened unconsciously, but somewhere deep inside, if Leon could just go away, it all happened unconsciously, but somewhere deep down, EG had been aware of it every step of the way. The flames of jealousy consumed him, and now the fangs of his own insecurity were buried in the flesh of his perceived enemy. He basked in the blood that flowed down upon him. EG saw himself as if he were looking in a mirror. Ready or not, this wild hell Logomon was about to make his wish come true, a wish whose implications he had admittedly not thought through, the wish being to win. So again, this whole passage, dare I say, I'm being dramatic, but I think it's really quite beautiful in a macabre kind of way, a dark kind of way, because obviously they're in a situation that one does not want to be in, but EG, through his self-reflection, he's recognizing why they came to this current situation, and he recognizes that it was his fault, and he also recognizes that he was aware of his emotions. As much as he wants to pretend that he wasn't aware that he was jealous, he was aware about that. All of this is really great evidence as to why Professor Ruzenji wants to work with EG. Despite EG making this mistake, it wouldn't doubt me when the next time the professor comes back, he's going to tell EG it was just one error. But Logomon's probably going to be back as well, but he's going to say, look, Logomon's back with you and he's still hanging out with you. It was an error that you overcame. You stumbled, but you corrected yourself and you're moving forward. I might be wrong about that. I'm hoping that I'm not, that the professor's not going to just ditch EG and Logomon, or worse yet, take away the linker strap and separate Logomon from Iggy. But all of this just really shows how strong and how much growth that EG is willing to do. He's still growing and he wants to continue to grow. And I really appreciate that in any kind of protagonist, be it in the written format, watching it on television, a movie, or playing the protagonist. That's something that I think all of us can emulate, hopefully, when things go incorrect in our own lives, right? We shouldn't just be remorseful and hide away. We should be remorseful, but ask ourselves, Futurama, right? Axe. In the future, they probably say axe versus ask. It's a running joke in Futurama. But again, when we have remorse, we should ask ourselves, what went wrong? How can we remedy that presently and also for the future so it won't go that way again? In other words, self-growth, self-reflection. And I especially like that last part. The last three paragraphs: the flames of jealousy consumed DG, and now the fangs of his own insecurity were buried in the flesh of his perceived enemy. He basked in the blood that flowed down upon him. EG saw himself as if he were looking in a mirror. Ready or not, this wild hell Logomon was about to make his own wish come true, a wish whose implications he had admittedly not thought through. Really dark, but also beautiful in its own kind of way because EG's learning something about himself. We had Judge right where we wanted him, and I forced you to Digivolve. I'm sorry, buddy. Hell Logomon's power was undeniable. They overwhelmed and Mega Digimon in their ultimate form. Of course, this came at the cost of EG turning them into monstrosities. Still, both of them had to win here. EG stood to lose so much more if they didn't, and yet EG felt the urge to fight evaporate. Focus, EG. Your willpower is all that can stop this beast's rampage. It's still your partner Digimon, Leon shouted, snapping EG back to reality. I'm trying, but it's not. The sounds of the various errors popping up inside the Digicore cut EG off as he tried everything he could to restore his connection with Hell Logomon. Command not found. I can't hear them. I can't hear my buddies, my Digimon's voice. Ugh. The ugh is actually from Leon, not EG. I should have stopped before the excuse me, because I actually really do like this passage. I think it was a great partner to the previous passage. So here we see a little bit of EG starting to give up a bit, but I would argue that he's not giving up because he wants to give up. He's giving up because of the situation at hand. It really feels like it's hopeless. And at this point, EG has been trying to remedy the situation, but nothing is helping, right? So I think we could cut EG a little bit of slack and starting to feel like he doesn't want to fight anymore. I would argue that he's becoming emotionally tired, and that's understandable. Despite that, though, there's still evidence to suggest that he does want to fight. For example, EG stood to lose so much more if they didn't win, and yet EG felt the urge to fight evaporate. And what I love about this so much is that when they say to win, they're no longer just talking about winning against Leon to win, Leon and Koichimon, but rather winning in order to save Hell Logomon, because if Hell Logomon ends up defeating everyone, then even though Hell Logomon has quote-unquote won, everyone else has lost. Hell Logomon is not in control of his own emotions, and he's going to lose his partner and also kill Leon and kill, Postman will go back to a Digitama, but one knows what I mean, though, who'll be killing, essentially. And EG does not want that, so the best way to prevent that is to win. To beat Leon and do one's best, beat Leon so then Leon is still alive, control Hell Logomon so he doesn't kill Leon, kill Koichimon, and EG wants to be within the Digicore and help to relax, calm Hell Logomon. Again, if EG is gone, calming Hell Logomon, that will no longer be an option whatsoever. Yet despite that, EG felt the urge to fight evaporate, and that's because he's emotionally tired. He recognizes that Hell Logomon is who he is because of EG's emotions. But despite that, it wasn't purposeful, it was subconscious. EG, although he may be unaware of his jealousy, did not want his jealousy to impact Logomon the way that it has, right? So I really do like that portion. Then Leon, how he's encouraging EG to continue fighting, again, just highlighting how they are still friends, or at least friendly with one another, despite everything going on, right? Leon could be, how dare you, EG, look what your Digimon has done to mine. He's killing Koichimon, right? Get out of there, Leon. Run. You're out of time, EG screamed. The will to fight was gone. I'm not giving up until you swear to me you'll quit code cracking. I'm going to save you no matter what it takes. The hell? EG was baffled. Why was Leon so committed to this? Why was he so fixated on EG's code cracking? They were close friends, sure, but they hadn't been in elementary school for ages. They'd forgotten about each other until they bumped into one another on the X Nation server. They didn't even hang out that much in the real world. If it weren't for Professor Ruzenji and the Digimon, their paths might never have crossed again. Why? Why can't you let it go? Iji asked. Leon was quiet. I know you've got a reason. He expected Leon would say he had to protect Professor Ridgely's reputation again, but there was no reason to make Iji specifically to give up code cracking. As a hacker, all Leon had to do was ensure the code crackers were destroyed. Kill them all. If Iji was gone, then www Flight 626. What? The flight that took Ichi's parrots from him. There's more to the story. It's earth-shattering, Iji. Leon began to say before a grating, high-pitched squeal cut him off. So right here we're getting some more background into Leon. Ichi's encouraging him to just go off. At this point, Kuwachimon is free from Held Logomon, but Leon is making the choice to stay. Why? Because he wants to help Iji. He wants to help Iji because he wants to reveal more information. I think we need to continue reading the further quotes before I could go more into this. But I think this is textual evidence to show that, again, Leon is a good individual. Although he might be stubborn, right? One could say, damn, Leon, you're still not giving up this whole code cracking business. We're now discovering that there's an emotional connection as to why. Why does Leon want Iji to stop code cracking? Well, as it turns out, it's because it has some relation to the www Flight 626. I also like how they're both aware how, well, we didn't really hang out in the real world. The only reason why we're close is because of the Professor and Digimon. I feel like that's reminiscent of real relationships in the real world. When one is young, it's easy to be friends, just to be friends. But as one gets older, one recognizes that, well, even if you're not hanging out 24/7 or communicating 24/7, there's certain aspects that makes one someone else is their friend, or has them be in a friendly relationship, right? So I do appreciate that as well. Let's keep on going. I also do like how Iji, the fact that he's saying, get out of here, Leon, run. You're out of time. He recognizes that he still wants to protect Leon. He recognizes that this is Iji's fault. If anyone has to suffer for the consequences of it, it shouldn't be Leon, it should be Iji. So Kuchimon stood motionless, tending to his grievous wounds. The textures destroyed by Hologomon's bite were bleeding, blood-filled with static noise. It flowed down Kuchimon's body, dripping off its armor and pooling on the ground below. So I don't mean to sound like I enjoy violence, but as an individual who has read multiple stories, who has consumed stories through games and movies and everything like that, this description is, I think, very awesome to mature Digimon. Again, we've seen other Digimon attack. Well, in the anime, we've seen Digimon attack one another. I haven't seen Ghost Game yet, but correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think we've ever seen Digimon, quote unquote, bleeding. We've seen them with static, implying that it's blood, but the way that it's described right here, it sounds like it's one for one, kind of like an ooze. If one has ever played Destiny 2, kind of reminds me of the Vix milk. Organic, but it's still technically technical, right? That's what it kind of reminds me of. It flowed down Koichi's body. What flowed down? Textures destroyed by Hologomon's bite were bleeding blood filled with static noise. It flowed down Koichimon's body, dripping off its armor. The use of the word dripping, its armor, and pooling on the ground below. I don't think we've ever gotten a description of a wounded Digimon like this before in the past. This excites me not because I enjoy violence, but rather I think this really shows that Bandai Namco is serious about taking the story in more mature routes. It probably won't go as dark as I'm hoping it will go, but so far with this one part, there's been 2 instances where I would argue it's much darker as compared to the past. And I think it's only able to do this because of its medium, because of its written format, which maybe I'm being biased, but I really do appreciate, I really am enjoying. If Leon was telling the truth, what would Iji have done had he known during the attack on the X Nation server? Digimon were still tools, so he probably would have followed orders and collected Messengermon, the Digimon that destroyed his life. Now, Iji's discovering that it was Messengermon's fault that the crash had occurred. This is Leon now. I put the pieces together and we were talking at the cafe. I didn't know your parents were on that flight. I didn't look closely at the passenger manifest. I'm sorry, Leon said. Why are you apologizing? Iji said, puzzled. It didn't have anything to do with Leon, did it? There was a fierce battle being waged on the network while the flight was in the air. while the flight was in the air. The U.S. Army Cyber Counterterrorism Unit was working to prevent the terrorist code cracking team from downing the flight. You're serious? See, the United States Army had its own version of Japan's Digipolice. Not stopping that accident, that terrorist attack, is my biggest regret. It hurts me to think about it even now, but I won't ever forget it, so I had to confront it and overcome it. I was at the scene of a terrorist attack, e.g., working to prevent it as a hacker. Leon was in high school. He fought a group of terrorists alongside a group of hacker cops trying to stop a Digimon committing an act of cyber welfare. That wasn't the scene of a terrorist attack, it was a war zone. He just learned how to manly go under his own power, and he was hoping to stop what was happening. He couldn't keep up with the superior team of codecrackers he was up against. The terrorists broke through the Army's line of defenses and completed their mission. The rest was history. WWW Flight 626 crashed into the Pacific, killing everyone aboard. I couldn't save your parents, even though I had a chance, Leon said mournfully. Why? I still don't understand why you apologize. Because you were my best friend, E.G. Leon always said what he meant. He was honest to a fault. So now we're discovering why Leon is taking such a personal interest in E.G.'s code cracking abilities. From Leon's perspective, he failed. He's failed a mission. He discovers that there was personal connections to that mission, and now he's discovering that the whole reason why the mission occurred in the first place was due to code crackers. And now Leon's discovering that E.G. is code cracking. I think now we could see why Leon's stubbornness, why he was so forthcoming and so adamant about stopping E.G. from code cracking, because code cracking is what led to his parents' death. And this is expressed in this part, but also in the previous part. Though, despite that information, I think if E.G. was aware about that, he was still going to code cracking. He wouldn't let that information stop him. Why? Well, because again, he mentioned this in this part, but was already brought up in the previous part. Leon is generalizing. Code cracking caused the destruction of Flight 626, but on the same side, code cracking was also attempting to save a Digimon being abused by a nation to cause cyber terrorism. We still don't know the full story. We don't know what the SOC was planning on doing with the Machinedramon, but all code crackers commit illicit activities, but all code crackers are not evil individuals, right? Hopefully that makes sense. I would not say that EG is a bad individual. He's code cracking. Well, we know why, because he wants to change the world, society, but also he wants to support himself, but doing so in such a way that he could still uphold his own morals. So even though we're finally discovering Leon's perspective, we understand that stubbornness could be alleviated a little bit. He is still being stubborn because he's so adamant that all code crackers are quote unquote bad or evil. But all of this, I think I really did appreciate this passage as well. I loved how I ended it here. The Leon always say what he meant. He was honest to a fault. So again, why did Leon view EG as his best friend, even though EG felt like, well, we didn't really hang out? Well, it's because Leon was an introvert. So the act of Leon reaching out and speaking with EG, just that act alone for Leon was enough. For Leon to do as an introvert, that was more than he was probably used to doing. And so I would argue that EG seems to be a little bit more extroverted than introverted compared to Leon. And so that's why Leon is able to say that EG was his best friend, because he was choosing to reach out to EG and EG reciprocated, right? A really lovely passage. I do like it. I also like, going back to it really quickly, how EG is responsible. Had he known this information, would he have still followed orders? Yes, he would have. He's not going to blame Machinedramon. Digimon was still tools, so he probably would have followed orders and collected Machinedramon. He was aware that it was the X Nation. And again, that Digimon, that Machinedramon was obviously being forced to commit its actions. Very small sentence, but again, very telling of EG's character. I really love it. You didn't kill them. That messed up dictator from the X Nation and his team of terrorist codecrackers did. EG hadn't changed his mind. EG had no reason to be mad at Leon for the death of his parents. So why did he feel the need to apologize? I'm going to stop right there really quickly. I think that's a really interesting line. So why did he feel the need to apologize? I believe that implies that EG did harbor some negative feelings toward Leon. So even though consciously he's saying you don't have to apologize, subconsciously he doesn't really feel like that. Does that mean that EG is not being honest? No, not necessarily. The unconscious versus the conscious. The unconscious typically harbors more base emotions. That's why it's important to be aware of it. The fact that consciously EG is able to say you don't have to apologize, it's because he's aware and he truly means that. But his emotional side wants to say, well, you could have saved my parents. What the hell, man? But his conscious side is aware of how irrational that line of thought would be, right? It's not as if Leon wasn't trying. I'm sure he was trying at that time. It was just an accident that he was not in control. All of this occurred in the first place because of the X Nation, right? So I just find that line really interesting to place right there. So why did he feel the need to apologize? Or maybe I'm overthinking it. Maybe when he says, why did EG... Maybe the he right here is referring to Leon. So why did Leon feel the need to apologize? Well, anyways, continuing forward. This is why it's important to make sure the pronoun is clear. EG hadn't changed his mind. EG had no reason to be mad at Leon for the death of his parents. Yeah, the his is referring to EG. So why did he... man. If it's referring to EG, the he, I stand by what I said. If it's referring to Leon... so if it's saying instead, so why did Leon feel the need to apologize? I don't think EG is taking into account again Leon's introvertedness. It made it seem like they didn't hang out on the outside, outside of school, outside of the internet. But for Leon, that was probably more than he typically did that with other individuals. But it's my responsibility as a hacker to uphold justice on the network, Leon said. If you continue down this path as a code cracker, you'll be caught up in a Flight 626 situation of your own someday. You might be even the one committing the act of terror itself. Quit treating code crackers like we're all the same. I wouldn't do that. Are you sure? You've already helped the SOC attack the X Nation servers, and now you're letting your Digimon run amok. Whether you intended to or not, EG started to see a path where he would eventually do as Leon said. He was quickly running out of counter arguments. I will break the cycle of pain and anguish created by the Digimon crimes you and yours commit. That's why I became a hacker, to fight for justice. To put it in EG terms, this is my life, my livelihood. I can't let you destroy it. I'm going to save you instead. So, I think Leon definitely does brings up good points, but I think what EG needs to keep in mind... Oh, sorry, that was my cat. No, my dog, she was playing with, so I don't know if you heard that. But Leon, what he says, pointing out... Excuse me, sorry about that. I just recently installed Ring, and so my dog is barking because there's someone at the door, but they're friendly, so everything's A-okay. Sorry about that, excuse me. Thank you for your patience, I do appreciate it. That was by accident. Anyways, what was I saying? I think what EG's not keeping in mind is that he did have a plan to follow. How the plan had gone through, there'll be no negative issues working with the SOC. Again, the SOC so far, their plans have not been proven to be, they are illicit, but illicit in a way to help other people. The last mission, Operation Infinity, was to save Machinedramon to stop X Nation from committing more cyber crimes. My point is that the SOC has not shown to be a force who commits cyber terrorism themselves. They seem so far to help prevent it. That might change as the story continues. So this whole course of action where Lorgomon has evolved into Hell Lorgomon, it wasn't because of the plan. It wasn't because of EG working with the SOC. It was because, unfortunately, EG allowed his jealousy to get the best of him. In other words, what I'm saying is, if EG was a little bit more emotionally mature, none of this would have happened. More than likely, to use Digimon terms, Ryu from Tamers, if this was Ryu instead of EG, I think the plan would have been A-okay. It would have gone off perfectly, right? Why? Because Ryu, I would argue, is a little bit more emotionally mature. But yeah, hopefully that analogy makes sense. So my point is, although Leon is making great points, he's not taking into account that this was not part of the plan. Hell Lorgomon was an unfortunate side effect of of EG not being in control of his own emotions, not because of the plan itself. So hopefully that makes sense. So I do like how EG is still defending himself, but we're seeing that for EG, Leon's points of view is starting to go through, right? We're at the last quote, and after this, I'm going to go check out what my dog is barking at. Everything's fine though, I'm sure. The barrier shattered to reveal a massive hole, a vortex. The yawning wireframe chasm looked like a gigantic black hole. Kuchimon's barrier had kept them completely unaware of the vortex forming right next to them. And now they were right on top of the latest vortex to spawn from this well-known hotbed of vortex activity. Because we must forget that's where EG, he chose that battlefield. The yawning from the last part. The yawning wild-frame chasm looked like a gigantic black hole. Kuichimon's barrier had kept them completely unaware of the vortex forming right next to them. Oh, excuse me. I really read this. Sorry about that. EG heard Marvin's warning echo in his head. Never approach a vortex. EG had no real frame or reference for how big this one was compared to the others, but it had to be at least as big as a soccer stadium. I'm not gonna lie, I only started reading from the beginning because of that description itself. Again, as someone who likes horror, as big as a soccer stadium, that's really big. I could hardly imagine that. It would be quite scary, in my opinion, quite frightening to witness. It moved slowly, spinning as it went, sucking up any and all data in its path, including the junk data that formed the island beneath them. Something began to emerge from the depths. A defender manifested from the deep. Mega-type Holy Knight attribute vaccine. It is known as a Holy Knight, a guardian deity, one of the 13 Royal Knights of Yggdrasil, and many other titles. Though it had no wings, it looked like an angel adorned in battle armor. Royal Knight Omegamon, EG and Leon exclaimed. It was humanoid in form, and on its right arm sat the Supreme Cannon, capable of freezing stars with a beam fired at absolute zero. On his left arm sat the Transcendent Sword, a peerless blade with which it was now inscribing system-level code for the digital world. Delete all. And that's where part 11 ends. So what a way to end part 11. I'm not sure if this is the ending of chapter 2. We might have one more part to kind of serve as an epilogue of sorts before we end chapter 2. But this part really was jam-packed with so much. Jam-packed with story, in my opinion. We're definitely moving the story along forward. I don't know where we're going to go after this. But also with characterization. Despite a lot of fighting happen, we got some first-hand view of Ichi's perspective and Leon's perspective. And again, I think that does so much for the characterization. It makes the reader connect with Leon and EG a lot more. I am still loving the relationship between EG and Leon, and I'm hoping that they're still going to remain friends after this, and they'll mend their friendship as they continue forward from this part. Leon obviously still cares about EG as a friend because he wants to save EG from his code cracking, but I would argue that EG is not going to stop code cracking. Even when Logomon turns back into Logomon, EG is going to continue forward. I'm also really looking forward to the interaction with the professor and what the professor is going to say. And then lastly, but certainly not least, this interaction with Omegamon. Where is this going to go? So far in Digimon property, Yggdrasil's really been, I really know him just primarily from Adventure Tri, so minor spoilers. But Adventure Tri, Yggdrasil was more of a neutral entity, always in the Digimon side rather than the human side. It was always for the defense of Digimon, and it kept Digimon first and foremost. Essentially, Digimon supremacy. So we're going to see that remains to be true in this iteration of the digital world and Seekers, or maybe if Yggdrasil will be given a little bit more than he typically has before in the past. My question for you is: do you have a favorite Royal Knight? Personally, for me, I am being biased. It will have to be tied between Omegamon and Dukemon or Gallantmon. They're both very cool. Anyways, thank you so much for watching. I do appreciate it. Looking forward to what else we have in store for Digimon Seekers. I'm so happy that Digimon Seekers exists in the first place. Have a prodigious day and take care, everyone. My cat says have a prodigious day as well. And once I check what's going on with my dog, I'm sure she'll have the same thing to say. Bye, everyone. Take care.